welcome to the last chunk on functions. So what we're going to talk about in this one is internal names versus external names, and then also optional values. So the function we're hoping to make is going to be called string doubler, and the idea of string doubler is that if you want to just pass in a string, it'll double it, right? So here you pass in jingle bells and it says jingle bells, jingle bells. And then this function has an optional value, which is called alternative multiple. So if you want to call string doubler, but with actually some other multiple, you could pass in 3, and so it'd say, woof, woof, woof. So let's go ahead and open up our Swift code, and let's start taking a look at how we're going to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by copying from above. I'm actually going to copy the first one again, because it's probably closer to what I really want with my string doubler. So what I want here is I want the name to be string doubler. And so string doubler by default, it's similar in that it needs a string and then a repeat count. But it's different in that you want to actually make an optional value. So I can go ahead and start putting this code on here. The first thing you'll notice is that it says, hey, alternate value, I don't know what that is. And this calls it with only one parameter, I don't know what that is. Maybe I should have just left those commented out for now. So what I wanted to show you first is that repeat count is the internal name. If you wanted to, you could also give this parameter an external name. We'll talk about why Swift had to do this. But really, the way it works is you just say, just like before the internal name, you say what the external name is. So this is external name, internal name. So inside the function, you call it repeat count. But then if you would like, you can call the function passing in an external name, and then it'll show up there. So you can see that this one works with an external name. There's actually a number of different things you can do with external names. If you wanted, you could also, so instead of saying that, if you wanted an internal and external name to be the same, you could actually just choose to put a $ in front of it, and then that would let you use the same internal and external name if you wanted to simplify it. Now, Swift had to use external names because one of the things Swift has to do is it has to be able to call Objective-C code. And you might not know much about Objective-C code, but external names was a big part of Objective-C, so they had to make this feature. Now, they've tried to make it like a positive. They've tried to make additional things you can do with it, but they were forced to do it. Another thing that external names become important for is they've added a way to make optional parameters. So if you don't want to specify the value, it'll have some defaults. Now there's a couple ways you can do optional values. The easiest way to do it is just to say after the parameter what it's equal to. So this kind of looks, a little gibberishy, except for if you kind of look at just that spot, it's the same way you declare a variable, right? So it's the exact same way as you declare a variable. Now, whenever you have an optional parameter, you're required to use an external name. If you fail to provide an external name, it will simply use the internal name for you, which, to be honest, is probably what you want most of the time, right? So most of the time, you get an external name for free, just because as soon as you set a default value, things are going to work out. So at this point, my example will work. And it will have a default value of 2 for jingle bells, and the name is repeat count because I haven't set it. But if I wanted to, I could actually come back in here and I could add back my explicit external name that is different than the internal name and call it alternative multiple. So it's up to you. If you wanted to always make your internal and external names the same, that probably makes some sense. But if you wanted to, you could actually make them different, which sometimes that's important to do as well. To be honest, you probably won't use external names unless you're calling an Objective-C function, because you have to. You won't use them unless it's a constructor. You actually have to use external names and constructors as well. And optional values. So you have to use external names in those situations. But to be honest, if you're making your own function, you probably won't bother with an external name. But it is really nice to be able to use optional parameters, as you can see here, and it just turns out they're just really useful a lot of places in Swift. All right, so that's kind of it for functions. We'll come back next time, and we'll talk about passing functions into other functions, which is called closures. See you then.